Here's a collection of knives I made from saw blades. Here's a full tang, a little tiny cheese knife or something. More of a regular utilitarian kitchen knife. Here's a little gift box with a rabbit dressing knife, cheese knife, and a cutting board. And with this sawzall blade, we've got a fish fillet knife. To begin with, saw blade steel is good. If you're looking for something stainless steel, you might use a broken scissor blade. Here I'm showing you we've made 4 knives out of just half of this 6-inch circular saw blade, which was big. So, decide on the layout of the blades. I think we'll make this right here. Here's a quick list of the tools you'll need for this. I keep the epoxy in my pocket. It's pretty cold out here. Use an 18-tooth stiff blade. Turn it sideways like this so when you cut through it won't interfere. And notch it first with a file. Now the vibrations are going to cause this to come loose, so several times throughout the cutting I'm going to have to stop and retighten these. Alright, one arrowhead. Alright, now I'm going to do it again to get a common problem. It started to run here when I was cutting it, so I turned the whole rig around, including the blade. Now we got our blade, so we need a handle and some rivets. So here's a downed power pole, and it has some excellent copper wire on it right here. So here's some things you can use as salvage to make the rivets. The copper wire that we just harvested. This is a piece of brass wire, toilet lift. Here's a piece of brass which used to belong to a sprayer hose fixture. Piece of brass, I don't know what it's from. Brass handle, cut a section of that out. You can even use brass screws, and there's no reason why you couldn't just use a plain old steel nail as a rivet. Some really nice cedar wood. I picked a piece of the standing dead wood off an ornamental. Going through your firewood piles a good bit. Here we've got some cedar, some cherry, some oak, a piece of mulberry, a piece of white ash. This is yellow locust. I think if we shape up this piece of juniper here, we'll make a real nice handle. We'll get a rough idea about how it's all going to fit together. And when grinding out the blade, it's really important to keep it cool, not mess up the temper of the steel. So I've ground out the shape of the tang and the shape of the blade, and it more or less follows the pattern of the tape. I can peel this masking tape off now. Hard work up to this point. Try to get this nice. Fold that over, make a mirror image for both sides of the blade. Trimming it. I'm going to start with bevel cutting the edge, both sides, then I'll bevel cut down the flat parts. rough ground our edge here, and it's time to do the finishing, but we're going to step through it with about 4 different grits of sandpaper. The highest being 800, which is very fine, will make a nice polish. 220, 180, and 100. My sandpaper up like this so I can know which part I'm using. So really what you're doing here with the coarser grit sandpaper is working out any imperfections and constantly checking the edge to make sure that it's even along the center. So we've been going at this for a while with the 100 grit till the sandpaper is used up. It looks really good. So when do I stop? Could be when the edge is perfect. Really could be when you've rendered the sandpaper useless. Could be when you've been going at it for so long you think, gosh, why am I still doing this? Could also be when you cut your finger because the knife gets so sharp. We're moving up to the 180 grit. We're going to step to the 220 now. I like the way the blade turned out after the 220, but it got really cold out here and the lights are flickering. 5 degrees, so it's time for me to head inside. Well, we're done with the 800 grit polish. So tape off and we can look at the blade. Well, it's still really cold out here. It's the next day, it's still snowing. How long should it take to make a knife? Probably about 4 hours start to finish in fits and bursts. I happen to be making an iMovie also and teaching myself how that works with the iPad. This tool is really handy here to make sure that I've got the right size drill bit to go with the... Okay. I use a carbide tip bit. So you see I've retaped the blade. I want to make sure my holes are far enough back so I don't split the handle when I drive the rivets in. And when I drill the holes, I want to make sure the sharp part of the blade isn't going to spin around and accidentally slice my fingers off. So we've got the holes in the tang. Now I'm just going to take the burrs off with the grinder real quick. It really helps to have a guideline for this. For the first couple strokes, we're going to go nice and slow and get the line set. Alright, now to open the gap to fit our blade in there, I'm just going to finish it by hand. Okay. I'm going to use the holes I just drilled in the tang to mark where I'm going to drill in the handle. Before I drill my second hole, I'm going to line my first hole up with the tang, make sure everything fits together like it's supposed to. Turn over and just clean up these holes on the other side. On my holes. Measure my gap for my rivets. Right through the wood. Be warned, this gets really hot, so hold on. Got the rivets, so now I'm going to grind on the profile of the handle a little bit just to give it some shape. So it's not necessarily to get it absolutely perfect, just get the shape you want. However, finished, because once the blade's in there, it's going to be hard to grind up front again. First I'm going to bevel this face, then I'm going to bevel the sides down. see I've got it so it'll slope away from the handle towards the blade. It's really just to prevent the wood from splintering when I hammer the rivet in. And now, nice and slow, make sure it goes all the way through. I'm chasing the plug I put in there. And the other one. Now I'm going to use the anvil part of the vise and go ahead and start whapping these. There's no hurry with this step. Go at it nice and slow. You don't want to hit it hard and crack the handle. Okay, so once the blade's in there nice and tight, you could say you're done, but we're not done. I like to put some epoxy in there, make it look nice and clean so there's no gaps, no moisture will get in there, and it'll lock it in there solid for the edges. Use the pointy end of this bamboo stick to really pop any bubbles out and really work it down in the crevice, especially down at the end where the hole is. Flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. So we're going to let this set up and dry overnight. Okay, I'm really psyched this epoxy is dry, and take the tape off and we'll grind this thing down one more time just to give it the finishing shape. So I'm going to try to get all the tape off, but I'm not going to worry about a little bit of extra glue here because the grinder should take care of that. So I want to pay especially close attention to this top edge, make it flush down to the metal so there's metal to wood. Using wood on my grinder wheel or epoxy on my grinder wheel, does it gum it up? Well, yeah, but the next time I grind something metal I just dress it out again and it doesn't seem to make much difference at all. Now I saved some of the sandpaper from before that I used for the blade, although this is fresh virgin pieces. Start with the 100 grit again and just get the shape down how I like it and work up through the finish. So here's just a couple more things to make a fine finish on your knife. First, I put a notch between the handle and the blade. Second is, when I'm sanding up here close to the blade, I want to be really careful. I don't want the sandpaper to accidentally scuff the blade I just worked so hard on. Third thing is, when I'm sanding these rivets, I want the sand scratch marks all to go in the same direction on the final sanding. And lastly, wherever there's burnish caused by the grinder wheel, go ahead and take that off. When I've finished sanding all the scratches out, give it a good wiping with the tack cloth to remove any grit that might still be on there, and give it a quick polish with the 800 grit. For finish, we've got some rather emulsified linseed oil and some turpentine. There's other finish options, but this one's pretty traditional and cheap, natural, all that. First I'm going to wipe all the tape and other scum off my blade with some turpentine. Get that nice and clean. I'm going to dip the handle right on in the linseed oil. Put that goop on over there and rub that in.